The doors of the Galaxy Trade Station slid open with a soft hiss. Margaret Collins stepped inside, her old shoes making quiet sounds on the metal floor. She carried a small bag in one hand and held her walking stick with the other. The bright lights made her squint for a moment. The trading station was huge and busy. Aliens from many different worlds walked around, buying and selling things. Some looked like giant insects with many arms. Others had blue skin and 3 eyes. A few had fur and long tails. Margaret had seen all kinds of aliens in her 78 years of life. She walked slowly toward the supply depot at the far end of the station. Her bag was almost empty of food, and she needed to buy more for her long trip to the next planet. The depot sold everything a traveler might need. Food, water, fuel, and ship parts filled the shelves. Margaret got in line behind a tall alien with purple skin. The alien looked down at her with its 4 eyes and made a face like it smelled something bad. Margaret had seen that look many times before. Some aliens thought humans were dirty or stupid. She just looked away and waited that the line moved forward. Slowly, Margaret watched the other customers. Most of them paid with small plastic cards or touched their hands to a screen. Some just looked at a scanner and the payment was done. Technology had changed so much since she was young. When it was her turn, Margaret walked to the counter. Behind it stood a Vrex alien named Zixthara. The Vrex looked like a cross between a lizard and a bird. It had green scales, a long neck, and sharp teeth. 2 small wings stuck out from its back, but they were not big enough for flying. Margaret put her bag on the counter. She had picked out simple things: some dried meat, fruit bars, water bottles, and vitamin pills. Nothing fancy or expensive. "I would like to buy these, please," Margaret said in a quiet voice. Zixthara looked at the items and pressed buttons on a screen. Numbers appeared showing the total cost. 47 credits and 30 cents, it said in a harsh voice. Margaret nodded and reached into her coat pocket. She pulled out an old cloth bag that was tied with string. The bag was worn and had been patched many times. She untied the string and opened it. Inside were coins. Lots of different coins. Some were from Earth and had pictures of old presidents. Others were from alien worlds she had visited. There were silver ones, copper ones, and a few that looked like they were made of gold. Zixthara stared at the coins. Its eyes got wide and its mouth fell open. "What is this?" it asked loudly. "Money," Margaret said simply. She began counting out the coins on the counter. "Money?" Zixthara laughed. It was not a nice laugh. "This is not money. This is junk. Metal. Pieces from dead worlds." Margaret kept counting. She had counted these coins many times before. Each one had a story. The Earth quarter was from her first day in space 50 years ago. The Andorian coin came from the planet where she met her husband. The small silver piece was from the world where her children were born. "Ma'am, you cannot pay with this garbage," Zixthara said even louder. Other customers started to look over. "This is a respectable business. We do not take trash." Margaret's hands shook a little, but she kept counting. "These coins are real money," she said. "They are worth the same as credits." Zixthara made a sound like a bird screaming. "Look at this," it called to the other customers. "The old human wants to pay with metal scraps. How primitive, how disgusting." A few aliens in line behind Margaret started to laugh. One of them, a creature with tentacles for arms, pointed at her and said something in its own language. The others laughed harder. "In my culture," Zixthara announced to everyone, "only beggars and criminals use such payment. Civilized beings use proper credits and cards." Margaret felt her face get hot, but she did not stop counting. She had been through worse things than this. During the Proxima Wars, she had lost her home, her husband, and both of her children. A rude alien clerk could not break her spirit. "Perhaps she stole them," said another alien customer. This one looked like a giant spider with too many eyes. Humans are known for taking things that do not belong to them. Or maybe she found them in the garbage, added the tentacle creature. Like the scavenger she is. More aliens joined in the laughter. They pointed at Margaret's old clothes and her worn bag. They made jokes about humans being too stupid to use modern payment methods. Zixthara enjoyed the attention. It picked up one of Margaret's coins and held it up for everyone to see. "Look at this," it said. "It has a picture of some dead human leader. Who cares about human history? Who cares about human anything?" Margaret finally finished counting. She had the exact amount needed. 47 credits and 30 cents, she said, pushing the coins towards Zixthara. The Rex clerk looked at the coins like they were diseased. "I suppose I have to touch these filthy things," it said. "But first, I need to get gloves." "I do not want human germs on my scales." The other customers laughed even harder. One of them started making gagging sounds like the coins smelled terrible. Margaret stood quietly while Zixthara put on plastic gloves. The alien made a big show of picking up each coin very carefully, like it might catch a disease from them. It held each one far away from its body before putting it in the payment machine. "The machine is probably going to break now," Zixthara announced. These ancient payment methods were not meant for modern equipment. The payment machine beeped and showed that the transaction was complete. The coins had been accepted without any problems. But Zixthara was not done being cruel. "Now I have to clean the entire machine," it said loudly. "Who knows what kind of bacteria and viruses these coins carry? The health department should hear about this." Margaret gathered her purchases and put them in her bag. She had gotten what she came for. That was all that mattered. She had learned long ago that some people were just mean, no matter what species. They were as she turned to leave. She noticed a man standing in line behind her. He had been watching everything quietly. He wore simple clothes and looked like any other human traveler. But there was something in his eyes that made Margaret pause. It was not pity or embarrassment. It was anger. The man in line watched everything happen to Margaret. His name was Keanu-chun, but the aliens around him did not know that. To them, he looked like just another human traveler. He wore old jeans, a simple brown jacket, and scuffed boots. His dark hair was a little messy, and he had not shaved in a few days. But Keanu was not just any human. In human space, his name was known by everyone. Children learned about him in school. Soldiers told stories about him around campfires. Politicians spoke his name with respect. He was a hero of the Centauri campaign, where he had saved thousands of lives. He had helped write the peace treaties that ended the worst wars in galactic history. Right now, though, he was just a man watching an old woman being treated badly. And it made him very angry. Keanu had been traveling alone for 3 months. He was on his way to a meeting with alien leaders on Kepler Station. His ship needed supplies, so he had stopped at this trading post. He had planned to buy some food and fuel, then leave quietly. He did not like crowds or attention. As he watched Margaret count her coins, Keanu remembered his own grandmother. She had also carried an old cloth bag full of coins. She used to tell him that each coin had a story. Some were from places she had visited, others were gifts from friends. A few were lucky coins that she had carried for decades. When Zixthara started making fun of Margaret, Keanu felt his jaw tighten. He had seen this kind of behavior before. Some aliens thought they were better than humans. They thought human customs were primitive and silly. The other customers joined in the mockery. They pointed at Margaret and laughed. They called her names and made jokes about human culture. Keanu watched it all, and his anger grew stronger. He looked around the depot. There were at least 30 people in the store. Most of them were aliens, but he could see a few other humans shopping in the back. The humans had heard the commotion and were looking over nervously. They wanted to help Margaret, but they were afraid of making trouble. Keanu understood their fear. Humans were a minority in this part of space. They had to be careful not to upset the local aliens. One wrong word could mean being banned from the trading station. For travelers like them, that could be a disaster. But Keanu was not just any traveler. He had spent his whole life fighting for what was right. He had faced down alien warships and negotiated with hostile governments. A rude store clerk did not scare him. The tentacle alien made another cruel joke about Margaret. It said that humans should not be allowed in civilized establishments. The other aliens laughed and agreed. One of them suggested that humans should have their own separate stores, away from proper citizens. Keanu's hands closed into fists. He had heard this kind of talk before, during the dark years before the peace treaties. Some aliens wanted to treat humans like second-class beings. They wanted to keep humans separate and powerless. Keanu had fought a war to stop that kind of thinking. He had lost friends and nearly died himself to ensure that all species were treated equally. Now he was watching it happen again, right in front of him. Zixthara continued the performance. It put on gloves like Margaret's coins were diseased. It held each coin far away from its body and made disgusted faces. The other customers ate it up, laughing and encouraging the clerk to be even more cruel. Margaret endured it all with quiet dignity. She did not fight back or argue. She just stood there and waited for it to be over. Keanu admired her strength. But it also made him sadder. She should not have to be strong in this situation. She should not have to endure this treatment. During the worst part of the humiliation, Keanu noticed something. Margaret's hands were shaking slightly as she counted her coins. Not from fear or embarrassment, but from age. She was old and probably had arthritis or some other condition that made her hands unsteady. That detail hit Keanu hard. This woman was elderly and probably struggling with health problems. She was just trying to buy some food and supplies. And instead of receiving help and respect, she was being mocked and humiliated by a crowd of strangers. Keanu thought about his own mother, who had died 5 years ago. She had been about Margaret's age when she passed away. What if someone had treated his mother this way? What if she had been alone and vulnerable, facing a crowd of cruel strangers? The thought made his anger burn even hotter. Zixthara finished processing the coins and made a big show of cleaning the payment machine. It sprayed disinfectant on every surface and wiped it down dramatically. The other customers applauded like it was the best entertainment they had seen all day. "There," Zixthara announced loudly. "The machine is clean again. I hope it still works after being contaminated by primitive currency." The spider-like alien suggested that the depot should put up a sign banning coin payments. "Keep the filthy humans and their garbage money out," it said. The others agreed enthusiastically. Margaret packed her purchases into her bag. She moved slowly and carefully, like someone who had learned not to make sudden movements around hostile crowds. Keanu could see that she was tired, and probably wanted to leave as quickly as possible, but the aliens were not done with her yet. "Wait," called the tentacle creature. "How do we know those coins were not stolen? Humans are known thieves. Maybe we should call station security." Several aliens nodded in agreement. They started suggesting that Margaret should be searched or questioned. Some wanted to confiscate her remaining coins as evidence. Margaret stopped walking. For the first time, Keanu saw fear in her eyes. Being detained by station security could ruin her travel plans. It could cost her money she probably did not have. It could even result in her being banned from the station. That was the moment Keanu decided he had seen enough. He stepped forward, moving with the quiet confidence of someone who had faced much worse situations. The aliens near him barely noticed. At first, he was just another human after all. Nothing special about him, but as Keanu moved closer to Margaret, something in the air seemed to change. Maybe it was the way he walked, or the set of his shoulders, or the look in his eyes. Whatever it was, the laughter in the depot began to die down. Keanu reached Margaret, just as Zixthara was reaching for the communication device to call security. He placed his hand gently on Margaret's shoulder and looked directly into her eyes. "Ma'am," he said in a voice that carried clearly through the depot, "I believe you have been treated with complete disrespect." Margaret looked up at the man who had spoken. His voice was calm but strong. She could see kindness in his eyes, but also something else. Something that made her think he was not someone to mess with. "Thank you," she said quietly. "But I will." "Be fine. I have dealt with worse things." Keanu nodded, but he did not move away from her. Instead, he turned to face Zixthara and the crowd of aliens who had been laughing at Margaret. The laughter stopped completely now. Something about the way Keanu stood made everyone pay attention. "This woman came here to buy supplies," Keanu said. His voice was not loud, but everyone in the depot could hear him clearly. "She paid with legal currency. She caused no trouble, yet you treated her like garbage." Zixthara puffed up its chest. "And who are you to tell us anything, human? Just another primitive space wanderer. You probably pay with coins too." Some of the aliens started to laugh again, but it was nervous laughter. They could sense that something had changed, but they did not know what. Keanu reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small wallet. From it, he took a simple identification card. It was nothing fancy, just a standard Terran Alliance ID. But when he held it up, everything changed. A human woman shopping near the back of the store saw the ID first. She dropped her basket and her mouth fell open. "Oh my God," she whispered. Then louder, "Oh my God, that's Keanu-chan." The name spread through the depot like wildfire. Other humans turned to stare. Some of them started walking closer to get a better look. One young man actually started shaking with excitement. "Keanu-chan?" said an older human woman. "The Keanu-chan? From the Centauri campaign? The same one who saved New Tokyo Colony?" asked another human. "The guy who wrote the Galactic Peace Accords?" added a third. The aliens in the depot began to look confused. They had never heard this name before. To them, Keanu was just another human. But the way the other humans were reacting told them this was someone important. Zixthara looked around nervously. "Who is this Keanu-chan?" it asked. The human woman who had first recognized Keanu stepped forward. Her name was Betty Wright, and she was a traitor from Earth. "You don't know who Keanu-chan is?" she said in amazement. "He's only the most famous human in the galaxy. He saved over 50,000 people during the siege of Centauri Prime," said the young man. "My father was one of them. He negotiated the peace treaty that ended the Vrex-human war," added another human. "The same war that killed my brother." The aliens started to look worried. They had heard of the Centauri campaign and the peace treaties. Those were major events in galactic history. If this human had been involved in those things, he was not just some random traveler. Keanu put his ID away. He did not like being the center of attention, but sometimes it was necessary. "I am nobody special," he said. "I am just a man who believes in treating people with respect." "Nobody special?" said Betty Wright. "Sir, you have 3 medals of honor from the Terran Alliance. You have honorary citizenship on 12 different worlds. You're on the Galactic Council of Species Relations." More details about Keanu's life started coming out. The humans in the depot were excited to meet their hero, and they could not help sharing what they knew about him. "He donated his entire military pension to help war orphans," said one person. "He spent 2 years rebuilding schools on Proxima 7 after the bombing," said another. "He turned down a position as Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Senate because he said he wasn't qualified," added a third. Even though everyone said he was the best choice, the aliens were starting to understand that they had made a big mistake. This was not just any human. This was someone with real power and influence. Someone who could make serious trouble for them if he wanted to. Zixthara began to sweat. The Vreks had been at war with humans for 10 years. Thousands of Vrek soldiers had died in that war. And now Zixthara learned that one of the humans who had fought in that war was standing right here in the depot. Keanu was not interested in threats or showing off his reputation. He was still focused on Margaret and what had happened to her. This woman, he said, pointing to Margaret, represents something very important. She represents the generation that fought and sacrificed so that we could have peace between our species. He walked over to Margaret's bag of coins, which was still sitting on the counter. With her permission, he picked up one of the coins and held it up for everyone to see. "This coin is from Earth," he said. "It was made in 2387. That was during the worst year of the Proxima Wars. While this coin was being made, Margaret was probably losing everything she cared about." Margaret's eyes filled with tears, but she did not cry. Keanu was right. 2387 was the year her husband and children had died. Keanu picked up another coin. "This one is from Andoria Prime. It was made in 2391. That was the year the peace talks began. Margaret was probably there, trying to rebuild her life." He picked up a third coin. "This one is from Kepler Station. It was made in 2395. That was the year the Galactic Peace Accords were signed. Margaret was probably celebrating the end of the wars just like everyone else." The depot had become completely silent. Even the aliens who had been laughing at Margaret were now listening carefully to Keanu's words. "Each of these coins tells a story," Keanu continued. "They represent places Margaret has been, things she has seen, experiences she has had. They are not just metal, they are memories. They are history." He looked directly at Zixthara. "When you mocked these coins, you were mocking 50 years of galactic history. You were mocking the sacrifices that made our current peace possible." Zixthara tried to speak, but no words came out. The alien had not realized that the coins had any special meaning. To Zixthara, they were just old metal pieces. "In human culture," Keanu said, "we have a saying, 'Respect your elders.' It means that older people deserve to be treated with honor and kindness. They have lived longer and experienced more. They have wisdom that young people need." He gestured to Margaret. "This woman has survived wars, loss, and hardship. She has traveled the galaxy and seen things that most of us can only imagine. She deserves respect, not mockery." The other humans in the depot began to nod in agreement. Some of them started to clap. The sound echoed through the large space, but Keanu was not finished. He turned to address the alien customers who had joined in the laughter. Keanu turned to face the aliens who had been laughing at Margaret. His eyes moved from one to another, looking at each of them carefully. The tentacle creature tried to hide behind a display of ship parts. The spider-like alien suddenly found the floor very interesting to look at. "I want to ask you all something," Keanu said. His voice was still calm, but there was steel in it now. "How old are you?" The question surprised everyone. The aliens looked at each other, not sure what he meant. Keanu pointed to the tentacle alien. "You, how old are you?" I am 28 standard years," the creature answered nervously. 28. Keanu repeated. "And you?" He pointed to the spider-like alien. 31 years, it replied in a tiny voice. Keanu nodded. 28 and 31. Both of you are younger than the peace treaties that ended the last galactic war. You have lived your entire lives during peacetime." He walked closer to them. "Do you know what life was like before those treaties? Do you know what it was like when your species and mine were killing each other?" The young aliens shook their heads. They had learned about the wars in school, but they had never experienced them. "Margaret knows," Keanu said, looking back at the elderly woman. She lived through it all. She lost her family in those wars. Her husband died fighting to protect a Rex colony from raiders. Her son died trying to evacuate civilians from a burning space station. Her daughter died treating wounded soldiers in a field hospital. Margaret closed her eyes. The memories were still painful after all these years. While you were being born into a peaceful galaxy, Keanu continued, Margaret was burying the people she loved most. While you were learning to walk and talk, she was rebuilding her life from nothing. The depot was completely quiet now. Even the background noise of the air recycling system seemed too loud. The coins you laughed at, Keanu said, some of them came from the worlds where her family died. She keeps them to remember them. Others came from the places where she helped rebuild after the wars. She worked for 20 years in refugee camps, helping people who had lost everything. One of the alien customers, a tall blue creature with 3 eyes, stepped forward. We did not know, it said quietly. Of course you did not know, Keanu replied. Because you did not bother to find out. You saw an old human woman paying with coins, and you decided she was worthless. You made fun of her without knowing anything about her life or her story. He turned to address the entire crowd. This is what I do not understand about your behavior. You live in a galaxy where dozens of different species work together. You shop in a store that serves beings from hundreds of different worlds. You benefit every day from the cooperation between species. Yet when you see something different from your own customs, your first reaction is to mock it. The blue alien spoke again. But sir, we were just having fun. We did not mean any real harm. Fun. Keanu's voice got a little louder. You think humiliating an elderly woman is fun? You think making jokes about someone's culture and customs is harmless entertainment? He walked over to where Margaret stood. She had been listening to everything, and there were tears in her eyes. But they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of gratitude. For the first time in years, someone was standing up for her. Let me tell you what your fun really is, Keanu said. It is the same kind of thinking that started the wars in the first place. It is the belief that your way of doing things is the only right way. It is the idea that anyone different from you is inferior. The spider-like alien tried to protest. But we were not being racist. We just thought coins were old-fashioned. Really? Keanu asked. Then why did you call her a scavenger? Why did you suggest that she had stolen the coins? Why did you say that humans should not be allowed in civilized establishments? The alien had no answer for that. Keanu continued his speech. You want to know what is really primitive? It is not using coins for payment. It is judging someone based on their appearance or their customs. It is treating elders with disrespect. It is ganging up on someone who's alone and vulnerable. He pointed to Zixthara, who was still standing behind the counter looking terrified. And you are supposed to be a professional. Your job is to serve customers, not to humiliate them. Instead, you turned this woman's simple purchase into a public spectacle. Zixthara finally found its voice. Sir, I apologize. I did not know who she was. I did not know her story. You should not need to know her story, Keanu said firmly. You should treat every customer with respect, regardless of who they are or how they pay. That is basic decency. He turned back to the crowd. All of you should understand something important. The peace we enjoy today did not happen by accident. It happened because people like Margaret were willing to sacrifice everything for it. They lost their families, their homes, their entire lives. They did it so that your children could grow up in a galaxy where different species could live together. Margaret stepped forward. Her voice was shaky, but she spoke clearly. I want to say something, if I may. Everyone turned to look at her. She seemed so small and frail compared to all the aliens around her. But when she spoke, her words carried the weight of her years and experiences. I do not tell people about my past because I do not want pity, she said. I have lived a long life, and I have seen many things. Some good, some bad. The coins I carry remind me of both. She opened her cloth bag and took out a small silver coin. This one is from the hospital where my daughter worked. I keep it too. Remember her kindness. She treated patients from every species, even former enemies. She took out another coin. This one is from the school where I taught refugee children after the war. Human children, Vrex children, Andorian children. They all played together and learned together. Margaret looked around at all the faces watching her. I do not carry these coins because I am poor or because I do not understand modern payment methods. I carry them because they remind me that we are all connected. Every species, every world, every person. She put the coins back in her bag. When you made fun of my coins, you were not just making fun of me. You were making fun of everyone who died to give us peace. You were making fun of the idea that different species can respect each other. The tentacle alien stepped forward. It looked ashamed. Ma'am, I am very sorry. I was wrong to laugh at you. I was wrong to say those things. One by one, the other aliens began to apologize. Some of them had tears in their eyes. They realized they had not just been rude to one old woman. They had been disrespectful to the memory of everyone who had died in the wars. But Keanu was not finished yet. He had more to say about respect and understanding between species. While the aliens were apologizing to Margaret, Keanu noticed someone hurrying toward them from the back of the store. It was a Vrex wearing a fancy uniform with gold stripes on the shoulders. This was Kalenara, the depot manager. Kalenara had been in the back office when one of the workers told him what was happening. The worker had said that Keanu-chun was in the store and that there had been some kind of incident with a customer. Kalenara had dropped everything and run to the front of the store. Mr. Chen, Kalenara said, breathing heavily from running. I am Kalenara, the manager of this depot. I heard there was a problem. Please tell me what happened. Keanu pointed to Zixthara. Your employee humiliated this elderly woman for paying with coins. Then half your customers joined in to make fun of her. Kalenara's face turned pale green, which was what happened when Vrex got very scared. This is terrible. This is a disaster. He turned to Zixthara. Is this true? Zixthara could not look at the manager. Yes, sir. But I did not know who the woman was. I did not know she was important. Important? Kalenara's voice got louder. Every customer is important. But even if that were not true, do you realize who this man is? He pointed to Keanu. I know now, Zixthara said miserably. Kalenara turned to Margaret and bowed deeply. In Vrex culture, bowing was a sign of great respect. Ma'am, I am so sorry for what happened to you. This is completely unacceptable. My employee will be punished. Margaret nodded but did not say anything. She was still processing everything that had happened. Kalenara then turned to Keanu. Mr. Chun, please know that this depot does not support this kind of behavior. We serve customers from all species and we respect all forms of legal payment. Then why did it happen? Keanu asked. This was not just one employee being rude. This was a room full of customers who thought it was funny to mock an elderly woman. Before Kalenara could answer, a communication device on his belt started beeping urgently. He looked at it and his face got even more pale. Excuse me, he said, and stepped away to take the call. Keanu could not hear what was being said, but he could see that Kalenara was getting more and more upset. The manager kept looking over at Keanu and Margaret while he talked. When the call ended, Kalenara came back looking like he might faint. Mr. Chun, that was a call from the Vrex diplomatic corps on the home world. Word of this incident has already reached them. How? Keanu asked. Someone in the store was recording video on their personal device, Kalenara explained. They posted it on the galactic network. It is spreading very quickly, Keanu sighed. He had hoped this could be handled quietly. He did not like being in the news, but now it was too late. The diplomatic corps is very worried, Culinara continued. They are afraid this will damage relations between the Vrex Confederation and the Terran Alliance. They want me to do whatever is necessary to fix the situation. Margaret spoke up. I do not want to cause problems between our species. That is not what I want at all. Ma'am, you are not causing problems, Keanu said gently. The problems were caused by people who chose to treat you badly. Culinara looked around the depot. Many of the customers were still there, listening to every word. Some of them looked ashamed. Others looked worried about what might happen next. Mr. Chun, Culinara said, what can I do to make this right? Please, tell me what you need. Keanu thought for a moment. First, I want you to make sure Margaret gets her shopping done properly, with full respect and no more problems. Of course, Culinara said immediately. Anything else she needs will be free of charge. I do not need charity, Margaret said firmly. I can pay for my purchases. Then you will pay with your coins, Keanu said, and they will be accepted with respect. Culinara nodded. Absolutely. Zixthara, process this woman's payment again. And this time, treat her like the valued customer she is. Zixthara looked miserable, but he began to carefully count Margaret's coins again. This time, he did not wear gloves. He did not make faces. He handled each coin with care and respect. Second, Keanu continued, I want you to train your staff about customer service. All customers should be treated well, regardless of how they look or how they pay. I will arrange training immediately, Culinara promised. Third, I want to see changes in how this depot operates. You should have clear policies about respecting different cultures and customs. Yes, Mr. Chun, we will create new policies right away. But Keanu was not done yet. He turned to address the customers who were still in the store. I want to talk. To all of you, he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. What happened here today was wrong. But it was also a learning opportunity. The customers gathered closer to listen. You saw an elderly woman doing something different from what you would do, Keanu said. Your first reaction was to mock her. I want you to think about why that happened. The blue alien with 3 eyes raised one of its hands. Mr. Chun, I think. It happened because we did not understand. We saw something unfamiliar and we assumed it was wrong. That is a good answer, Keanu said. But why did you assume it was wrong? Why not assume it was just different? The tentacle creature spoke up. I think we were taught that our way is the best way. So when we see other ways, we think they must be worse. Exactly, Keanu said. And that kind of thinking is dangerous. It is what starts conflicts between species. It is what leads to discrimination and hatred. Margaret stepped forward again. If I may add something, she said. I have lived long enough to see many different ways of doing things. Human ways, Vrex ways, Andorian ways, and dozens of others. I have learned that different does not mean wrong, it just means different. She looked around at all the alien faces. Each species has things they do well. Humans are good at adapting and surviving. Vrex are good at organizing and planning. Andorians are good at art and music. We all have something valuable to offer. One of the younger aliens, a furry creature with big ears, asked a question. But how do we know when something is just different and when it is actually wrong? Margaret smiled. That is a very good question. The answer is simple. If something hurts innocent people, it is wrong. If something helps people or makes their lives better, it is probably good. And if something is just a different way of doing the same thing, then it is probably just different. Culinara had been listening to everything. Now he stepped forward again. Mr. Chun, Mrs. ... He realized he did not know Margaret's name. Collins, Margaret said. Margaret Collins. Mrs. Collins, Culinara continued. I want to offer you something. I want to give you a permanent customer account with this depot. You can shop here anytime you want, and you can pay however you prefer. Your coins will always be welcome here. Margaret looked surprised. That is very kind, but I do not need special treatment. It is not special treatment, Culinara said. It is the treatment that every customer should receive. I am just making sure that you get it. Keanu nodded approvingly. It was a good start, but he knew that real change would take time and effort from everyone. 3 hours later, Margaret had finished all of her shopping. Culinara had personally helped her find everything she needed for her journey. Other customers had approached her throughout the afternoon to apologize and share their own stories. Customers had approached her throughout the afternoon to apologize and share their own stories. Tentacle Alien, whose name was Veltar, had told Margaret about his grandmother who collected shells from different ocean worlds. The spider-like creature, called Thix Ara, had shared how her grandfather kept old tools from his farming days. They were beginning to understand that keeping meaningful objects was something many species did. Word of the incident had continued to spread across the galactic network. News reporters were asking for interviews. Politicians were making statements about the importance of respect between species. The video of Keanu defending Margaret had been watched millions of times, but Keanu did not want to talk to reporters. He had said what he needed to say in the depot. Now he just wanted to make sure Margaret was okay. How are you feeling? He asked her as they sat in the depot's small cafe area. Margaret sipped her tea slowly. I am fine, she said. I have been through much worse things than rude store clerks. I know you have, Keanu said, but that does not make this okay. No, it does not, Margaret agreed. But I am glad it happened. Keanu looked surprised. Glad? Margaret smiled. Yes, glad. Because it taught people something important. Sometimes bad things happen so that good things can come from them. She looked around the depot. The atmosphere had completely changed since the morning. Customers were being more polite to each other. Employees were treating everyone with more respect. Some aliens had even started asking questions about human culture and customs. Look, Margaret said, pointing to a corner of the store. A young Vrex was showing a human family how to use a traditional Vrex payment method. They were all laughing and having fun learning something new. And over there, she added, pointing to another area, a group of different aliens were sitting together, sharing stories about their home worlds and their customs. Keanu had to admit that something good was happening. The incident had forced people to think about how they treated others. It had started conversations about respect and understanding. I have a confession to make, Margaret said quietly. What is that? I knew who you were from the beginning, she said with a small smile. I recognized you the moment I saw you in line. Keanu looked shocked. You knew? Then why did you not say anything? Because I wanted to handle the situation myself first, Margaret explained. I have been taking care of myself for 50 years. I did not want to hide behind someone else's reputation. But you let me step in eventually. Yes, because I realized that this was bigger than just me. This was about how we treat each other as different species. You had something important to say, and people needed to hear it. Keanu nodded slowly. He understood. Margaret had shown her own strength first, and then had let him use his influence to teach a larger lesson. You are a remarkable woman, he said. I am just an old lady who has lived long enough to learn a few things, Margaret replied. One of those things is that fighting always works better when people fight together. Culinara approached their table. Mrs. Collins, Mr. Chun, I wanted to give you an update on the changes we are making. What changes? Keanu asked. First, we are creating new training programs for all our employees. They will learn about different cultures and customs from across the galaxy. They will also learn proper customer service techniques. That sounds good, Margaret said. Second, we are changing our payment policies. We will now officially accept any legal currency from any recognized world. We are also installing new equipment that can handle old coins and currency more easily. Keanu was impressed. Those are real changes, not just words. Third, Kulinara continued, we are starting a cultural exchange program. Once a month, we will invite someone from a different species to teach our staff and customers about their customs and traditions. I love that idea, Margaret said. Learning about each other is how we build understanding. Would you be willing to be our first guest speaker? Kulinara asked. You could tell people about human customs and your experiences traveling the galaxy. Margaret looked thoughtful. I would be honored to do that. As the day ended, Keanu and Margaret prepared to leave the depot. Their ships were docked in different areas of the station, so they would be going separate ways. Before we part, Keanu said, I want to ask you something. What is that? You have traveled alone for 50 years. Do you ever get lonely? Margaret considered the question carefully. Sometimes, she said honestly. But I have learned that you are never truly alone if you treat people with kindness. Everywhere I go, I make friends. Some I see again, some I do not, but each friendship makes the journey worthwhile. That is a good philosophy, Keanu said. What about you? Margaret asked. You are famous and respected, but do you have people who care about you as a person, not as a hero? It was Keanu's turn to think carefully. A few, he said. But not as many as I should. I spend too much time working and not enough time building relationships. That is something you should change. Margaret said gently. Fame and respect are nice things, but they cannot keep you warm at night or make you laugh when you are sad. Keanu smiled. You are giving me advice now? I am old enough to give advice to anyone I want, Margaret said with a laugh. Even famous war heroes. They walked together toward the exit of the depot. Behind them, they could see the changes that had already begun. Customers were talking to each other more. Employees were smiling more. The whole atmosphere was friendlier and more welcoming. I think we did something good today, Keanu said. We did, Margaret agreed. But the real work starts now. Changing attitudes takes time. It takes patience. It takes people being willing to listen to each other. As they reached the exit, Margaret turned to face Keanu one last time. Thank you, she said. Not for defending me, but for understanding what was really important about this situation. Thank you for teaching me something too, Keanu replied. You showed me that dignity comes from within. No one can take it away from you unless you let them. They shook hands, and then Margaret walked toward her ship. Keanu watched her go, thinking about their conversation. She was right about many things. He did need to focus more on personal relationships. He did need to remember that fame was not the same as friendship. Over the following weeks, the story of what happened at the depot continued to spread. It became more than just a news story. It became a symbol of how people should treat each other. Schools used it to teach children about respect. Diplomats used it to discuss cooperation between species. Margaret kept her promise and became a regular speaker at the depot's cultural exchange program. Her talks were always full of wisdom and humor. She shared stories from her travels and taught people about the importance of understanding different customs. The depot itself became famous as a place where all species were welcome and respected. Other businesses began copying their policies and training programs. The changes spread from one store to hundreds of stores across the galaxy. But perhaps the most important change was in the people who had been there that day. They had learned that respect was not just a nice idea, but a necessary foundation for peace between different species. They had learned that everyone had a story worth hearing and a life worth respecting, and Margaret continued her journey through the galaxy, carrying her bag of coins and her lifetime of wisdom, making friends wherever she went and teaching anyone who would listen that kindness was the most powerful force in the universe.